The wagon creaked under its own weight as it rolled to the narrow pine pass, its wheels biting into the muddied earth from last night's rain. Mist hung low over the trees like breath caught between clenched teeth. The horses snorted, uneasy, sensing something the riders didn't care to notice, or didn't care at all. Clara Wills sat stiffly in the back, her swollen belly cradled beneath her arms, trying to shield her 5-year-old son from the cold draft slipping through the canvas. James clung to her shawl, silent, his eyes wide and far too knowing for a child that small. They hadn't eaten since dawn. Her lips were cracked, hands numb from gripping the boy like he was the only thing anchoring her to the world. Ahead rode 4 men on horseback, rough types, bearded, scarred, stinking of sweat and old whiskey. They hadn't spoken to her much after her husband died. Before, they called her ma'am, offered to help her down from the wagon, even cracked jokes. But after her robber took a bullet in a border skirmish, everything changed. They grew colder, less patient. She'd heard them laugh when she cried at night, when she whispered prayers too soft to carry. The lead rider, a tall brute with a red beard and a broken nose, spat to the side and called back, "We'll make camp here." His voice cracked like a whip. The wagon stopped near a clearing beside a crooked stream. Clara climbed down slowly, wincing at the pain in her back, the way her child and the one still unborn making every step an effort. No one offered a hand. One of the men, Jeb, the youngest, tossed her a moldy blanket. "Reckon you and the boys sleep there. Not too close to our fire." She gave a small nod, said nothing. James sat beside her, small and trembling, his hands red with cold. She wrapped the blanket around them both, suppressing a shiver. Night came down fast, swallowing the forest in silence. The men passed around a bottle near their fire. She could hear snippets of their talk. Names she didn't recognize. Towns they'd burned. Women they'd left crying. The kind of stories men tell when they think no one decent is listening. Then she heard her name. "She's more trouble than she's worth," one muttered. "Pregnant and dragging a kid? She's gonna slow us down," said another. "She's already slowing us. Best let her sleep here permanent." The red-bearded one, Rook, said, his voice low and cruel. "Plenty o' things in these woods that'll do the job for us." Laughter followed. Sharp, ugly. Clara's breath froze in her lungs. She clutched James closer, whispering, "Don't move. Don't make a sound." Sometime deep in the night, they came for her, boots crunching dry leaves, whispered curses. A hand grabbed her hair, yanking her from the ground. James screamed as she hit the dirt hard, her breath ripped from her lungs. "No, please, he's just a child." A fist slammed into her cheek, silencing her. Jeb yanked James away. "Shut him up." Clara thrashed, kicked, bit. Her fingernails tore through someone's skin. Another blow knocked her vision sideways. She tasted blood. Her baby twisted painfully inside her as someone kicked her belly. "Don't kill her yet," Rook said, grinning. "We ain't monsters." They dragged her into the trees, dumped her on the cold earth beside a stump. One of them tore the silver locket from her neck, the one Robert had given her the day they married. "Consider this your ticket west," Rook sneered. "Paid in full." The sound of horses galloping away came next. Wagon wheels grinding down the trail. Then silence. Only the forest. Only her and James, left to die. She crawled through broken pine needles and blood-soaked dirt, gasping, one hand pressed against her stomach. Pray to anything that might still listen. James whimpered, trying to crawl toward her. "I'm here," she said hoarsely. "Mama's here." She pulled him into her arms, feeling the stickiness on his back where they'd struck him too. Her head throbbed. Every breath hurt. But she wasn't dead. Not yet. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting shadows like ghosts across the clearing. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. James stirred in her arms. "Mom, are we going to die?" "No." Her voice came out sharper than she intended. She softened it, brushing his hair back. "Not tonight." She sat upright, blinking away the darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. Her hands shook as she reached for the old canteen they hadn't stolen. It sloshed with maybe 2 swallows left. She gave the first to James. The second she held in her mouth, warming it before swallowing. Her mind reeled. They'd taken the wagon, the horses, the food, left her with a dying fire, a useless blanket, and a wounded child, miles from the nearest town, her baby not far from coming, and winter nipping at the edges of every breath. She stared into the trees, vision blurring. Her head dropped forward, exhaustion clawing at her. But just before her eyes closed, something moved. Not an animal, not a settler, a figure, tall, silent, watching from the trees. She blinked. Gone. A trick of the dark? Or something more? She pulled James closer, forcing her body upright again. The shadows seemed to listen, pressing in closer with every heartbeat. "I won't let them win," she whispered. "I won't let this be the end." And with that, she tightened the blanket around her son, shifted her weight to her knees, and began to crawl forward into the woods, into the unknown, dragging everything she had left with her. Behind her, the fire flickered its last breath, and far above, high in the pines, something unseen watched. Clara stumbled to the undergrowth, her boots slipping in the soft mud, her knees raw and bleeding. Her breath came in ragged gulps, each step a declaration, a war against her own body. James rode on her back, arms around her neck, too weak to speak. The bruise on his temple had darkened, his forehead fever-hot against her skin. The air was sharp with pine and the copper tang of dried blood. Cold crept into her bones like a promise. She didn't know how long she'd been walking. Time blurred without roads or markers, just the direction the sun fell and the pull of desperation in her chest. Her limbs screamed with exhaustion, but she kept going. If she stopped, they would die. And she would not die like this, not in some nameless clearing, like discarded meat. Something shifted in the woods. A soft crack. She froze. James whimpered faintly. She turned in a slow, aching motion, peering between trees, her vision swimming. Nothing, but she felt it. Eyes. Watching. Clara gritted her teeth and moved on. The forest grew thicker, trees standing closer together, their limbs whispering secrets above her. At dusk, she found a shallow depression beneath a crooked oak and eased James down onto the mossy ground. He was delirious, whispering nonsense about trains and toy soldiers. She gathered what dead branches she could with trembling fingers and built a fire. The flame caught after several tries, flickering uncertainly in the gloom. She clutched James against her side, sharing what little heat she could. Hunger clawed at her, a sharp, twisting pain. Her last meal had been a crust of bread 2 days ago. The wind shifted. She looked up. Silence. But when she glanced back at the fire, there it was. Meat. A small bundle wrapped in deerskin, left on a flat stone no more than 10 feet away. She stared, not daring to move. Her heart pounded. No footsteps. No noise. Whoever or whatever had left it was gone. She lunged for it, tore the wrap open. Smoked rabbit. Still warm. She looked around wildly. Who's there? Her voice cracked. Nothing answered. She fed James first, pressing slivers into his mouth. He chewed, barely conscious. Then she ate, too quickly, too hungrily. She cried while she ate and didn't know why. In the night, the wind picked up. Trees creaked like old bones. She dreamt of Robert, his uniform bloodied, his eyes blank, his voice saying, "You're not done, Clara. Keep moving." The next day was colder. Clara fashioned a sling from torn petticoat strips and carried James on her hip. Her muscles ached with every shift, but she pushed forward. A hawk circled above. She followed the sound of water until she found a stream running over rocks, icy and clear. They drank deeply. She cupped water over James's face. His eyes fluttered. Then she saw it. Hoof prints in the mud on the opposite bank. Deep, fresh. Her breath caught. She stared into the trees, every hair on her neck rising. A figure moved behind the branches. Tall, still, watching. "Please," she called out. "I don't want trouble." Nothing. She turned, shielding James with her body. When she looked back, the figure was gone. Later, as the sun dipped low, Clara found another offering. This time a pouch of dried berries laid neatly atop a stump. Her hands shook as she gathered them. It wasn't magic. Someone was following them, but they hadn't attacked. They hadn't taken. They had fed her. James whimpered in his fever dreams. "Mama, a cold." She curled around him under a cluster of fallen branches, creating a crude shelter. She sang softly, half lullaby, half prayer. In the deep hours, she stirred to the sound of horses. Distant, faint, she couldn't be sure. But she remembered the outlaws, remembered Jeb's laugh, the way Rook smiled when he struck her. She held James tighter and didn't sleep again. By morning, the fever had worsened. James's skin burned, his eyes unfocused. Panic bloomed in Clara's chest. She needed help. Now, she climbed with him down a rocky incline, seeking flat ground. Her legs buckled more than once. At the bottom, she slipped hard and slid down into a narrow ravine. Her elbow struck stone. She screamed, curling protectively over her child. Dirt filled her mouth. She rolled onto her back, gasping, clutching her arm. It throbbed, possibly fractured. Her breaths came too fast. Too shallow. This was it. No more steps. No more tricks. She was done. "God help me," she whispered. "Please." A branch cracked above. She turned her head. He was there. A man, still as stone. Dark braids, tan skin. Bare chest beneath a leather vest. Bow in hand. Knife at his hip. He didn't move. Didn't speak. His face unreadable. She didn't know if he was real. Clara swallowed hard, shielding James instinctively. "Are you the one who left the food?" Silence. Her pulse thundered. "He's sick." He's burning up." The man took a step down into the ravine. Clara flinched. "Please don't." He knelt in front of her. No sudden moves. Just calm, eyes locked on hers. From a pouch at his side, he produced a small bundle of herbs, crushed some between his fingers. The scent, pungent, earthy, drifted to her nose. He dipped a cloth into water, mixed the herbs, and gently pressed it to James's forehead. Clara couldn't speak. He glanced at her injured arm. Reached out. She recoiled. He stopped, waited. Slowly, she extended her arm. His hands were warm, calloused. He touched her elbow with care, testing movement, then retrieved a thin branch and some string. With precise motions, he splinted it. When he finished, he stood, then offered her a water skin. She took it. "Thank you," she whispered. He turned without a word and walked up the ravine, disappearing into the trees. Clara looked down at James. The boy's breathing was steadier, the fever lower. She looked up again, but the woods were empty. Yet in the quiet, she didn't feel alone. She wrapped her son tighter in the blanket, shifted to her knees, and began crawling toward the direction the stranger had gone. Not to chase him, but to follow. Somewhere, in the branches overhead, a hawk called out, and the trees, once cold and threatening, now whispered something else entirely. The third day passed in silence, save for the groaning of trees and wind and the soft gurgle of the stream. Clara followed the trail left for her. Barely visible marks in the moss, broken twigs bent at unnatural angles. Not random, intentional, left by the one who had saved her son. The one she'd seen only once, and not long enough to understand anything but the way his eyes didn't flinch when she begged. James clung to her back again, lighter now, his body drained by fever and hunger. She whispered to him often, even when he didn't answer, words falling from her lips like lifelines. "Stay with me, baby, just a little longer." She didn't know where she was going, only that he wanted her to follow. By nightfall, she found a hollow beneath a ridge where dry leaves had been swept away. A fire was already built, unlit, with flint tucked beside it. She stared at it a long moment. A message. Light it. Stay. You are not alone. She struck the flint with numb fingers until the fire bloomed to life. The warmth spread slowly, like thawing memory. She sat there, James in her lap, rocking him gently. The sound of horse hooves came hours later, soft but certain. She didn't flinch, didn't reach for the rusted blade tied at her waist. If he meant harm, He'd had a dozen chances already. The Comanche warrior dismounted without a word, tethering his horse to a branch. He moved like a shadow, fluid, intentional. His eyes flicked to James, then to her. Clara said nothing. She had no words left. He knelt across the fire and placed a bundle on the ground. Inside, roots, berries, dried meat, and a handful of soft cotton rags. Then, with careful hands, he pulled out a wooden bowl, filled it from his water skin, and crushed herbs into it. Clara watched. Every movement was deliberate, as though each task had weight, meaning. He dipped a cloth into the mixture and handed it to her. She pressed it to James's forehead. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once. Still silent, still unreadable. She studied his face. High cheekbones, wind-burned skin, a long scar across his jaw. He looked young and old at once, like a man who'd seen too much and carried all of it in his silence. "I don't know your name," she said. He didn't answer. "Mine's Clara." He met her gaze, then pointed at himself. "Taka." She repeated it. He nodded. That was all. In the morning, Taka was gone, but James's fever had broken. Clara wept. Holding her son as the fire smoldered. For the first time in days, he looked at her and asked for water. Later, she found moccasin prints nearby. A clear trail this time. She followed them. James walking beside her now, holding her hand like when they used to go to the market. Each step was slow, but no longer hopeless. By noon, they reached a glade with a lean-to already standing. A fire crackled beside it. Taka sat there, sharpening a blade, glancing up only once when she entered. He rose and gestured for them to sit. Then, using stones and dirt, he drew a rough outline of the terrain. Rivers, cliffs, a canyon. He pointed west. Clara understood. That way, safety. "Town?" she asked. He shook his head. "No town. People there not safe for you." Clara felt her chest tighten. "Because of me?" He hesitated, then pointed to James. "Him. Yours. But they don't see that." Her face paled. She swallowed. "You mean because he looks like Robert?" He didn't reply. She stared into the fire, heart pounding. James had his father's eyes, his cheekbones. Her husband's regiment had faced Comanche fighters on more than one occasion, and yet here was one of them, saving his child. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Taka looked at the boy. "Because I couldn't help mine." He stood abruptly and walked into the trees. She didn't follow. Not that day. The next morning, Clara helped gather firewood. She watched how he walked, how he listened to the forest. He showed her which roots were safe, how to peel bark for tinder. They didn't speak much, but she began to understand the rhythm of his silence. One evening, James laughed for the first time in days. He'd found a stick shaped like a gun and aimed it at a squirrel. Taka watched him for a long moment, then mimicked the boy's stance. The two exchanged glances, a shared grin. Something wordless passed between them. Clara smiled, despite the ache still buried in her chest. That night, she asked Taka, "Do you have family?" He stared into the flames. "Once." He said nothing more. The next day, they found wagon tracks. Clara knelt beside them, breath held. "Outlaws," Taka said. Her stomach twisted. "Them?" He nodded. "Close." Clara stood, rage flooding her limbs. "I want to see them fall." Taka looked at her, long and hard. Then he reached into his satchel and pulled out a small pistol. He showed her how to load it, how to aim, how to breathe before the shot. Her hands trembled. She fired once into a tree. The recoil nearly knocked her down, but she didn't flinch. She simply asked, "Again?" That night, they sat in silence, the fire low. James slept curled beside her. Taka spoke first. "You are not weak." Clara turned to him, surprised. "Most would have died." She shook her head. "I wanted to. The first night. When they left me. But you didn't." "No. Because of James." He nodded. "And because of you." She looked away, blinking fast. The fire popped between them. Then he said, "Tomorrow, we end it." She understood. In that moment, under the stars and beside a man who had no reason to help her, but did. Clara Wills no longer felt like a widow lost in the wild. She felt like something else, a survivor, a reckoning, and in the darkness beyond the firelight, fate waited with bated breath. Dawn broke blood-red over the pines, the sky painted in fire as if the earth itself knew what was coming. Clara tightened the band around her belly, every movement deliberate. Her time was close. She could feel in the rhythm of her body, the weight in her hips, the way her breathing caught on every deep inhale. Still, she pressed on. Today would not be about weakness. It would not be about fear. It would be about finishing what was left undone. Taka rode ahead, silent as ever, bow across his back, rifle in hand. Clara walked behind with James pressed close to her side, the pistol tucked into her skirt. She hadn't fired it since the tree, but today she would. They reached a ridge overlooking a clearing littered with broken barrels and burnt wagon parts. Smoke curled lazily from a low fire where 4 men lounged with whiskey bottles and rifles within easy reach. Horses dozed nearby, tethered but unsupervised. It was them. No doubt. Jeb was sharpening a blade. Rook, red-bearded and cruel-eyed, was leaning against a crate, laughing at something crude. Clara stared down at them, her jaw clenched. Her heartbeat thundered, so loud it drowned out the wind. Taka handed her a canteen. "Stay high. Wait until I draw them out." "I want to fight," she said, voice tight. "You will." He vanished into the trees, a blur of movement lost in the shadows. Clara pulled James behind a rock, kissed his forehead, and made him promise to stay hidden. "No matter what you hear, don't move. Understand?" His eyes were wide. He nodded. Then she crawled to the edge of the ridge, pistol in hand. Minutes passed. The outlaws were laughing again until one of them gasped. Taka appeared in the clearing like a storm. His knife flashed, cutting down the first man before he could even shout. Chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the morning. Jeb lunged for cover, yelling, "Ambush!" Clara waited. Taka rolled beneath a wagon, took out a second man with a silent arrow. But they were circling now, adapting, firing wildly into the trees. Then she saw him, Rook, dragging James out from behind the rocks, gun to the boy's head. "Drop it," he screamed. "Drop your damn weapons, or the boy gets it." Clara's world narrowed. Everything stopped. She stood, gun raised. Rook's eyes widened. "You again? Thought I left you for crows." "Let him go." "You ain't got the stones." "I have nothing left to lose." Her finger trembled on the trigger. Rook laughed, a loud bark of disbelief. "You're shaking." "I'm pregnant. Not weak." Then she pulled the trigger. The shot rang out like thunder. Rook stumbled backward, a bloom of red on his chest. He collapsed, dragging James with him. She ran before she knew she was running. Taka was there first, catching James, pulling him clear. The boy cried out, unharmed. Clara dropped to her knees beside him, pulling him into her arms. "I've got you. I've got you." But it wasn't over. Jeb was still alive, crawling behind a barrel, bleeding, mad with panic. He raised his gun. Taka turned too late. Clara saw it all unfold in the seconds that stretched like years. Then she screamed. A blast. Taka staggered, then dropped to one knee. Clara didn't think. She moved. The second shot went wide as she tackled Jeb, pistol gone. They rolled in the mud, fists in fury and vengeance. He was stronger, bigger, but she was done being prey. She drove her thumb into his eye. He howled. She found a rock, brought it down, again, until he stopped moving. Silence fell over clearing. She stood, panting, soaked in blood and sweat and tears. The pistol lay beside her. She didn't pick it up. James ran to her, burying his face in her belly. Taka sat against the broken wagon, pressing his hand to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. Clara knelt beside him, panic gripping her. "No," she whispered. "You can't die. Not now." He met her eyes. "Not yet." She tore strips from her shawl, pressed him to the wound. He winced but didn't cry out. "I need you," she said. "I need you." "You don't," he said, his breath ragged. You just think you do. Tears streaked her face. Don't you dare leave me. He looked at James. He's strong, like his mother. Hours passed before the bleeding slowed. They moved what little supplies the outlaws had, rifles, blankets, dried meat, into a pile. Taka rested, his color returning bit by bit. James stayed beside him, holding his hand. Later that night, Clara felt the first true contraction. She didn't scream, just breathed through it, hands gripping the earth. Taka stirred. Now! She nodded. He rose shakily, supporting her as she leaned against a rock, legs trembling. The pain came in waves, fast and sharp. James watched from a distance, wide-eyed, terrified. Taka knelt beside her, his voice calm. You can do this. And she did. Through agony, through fire, through blood. By dawn, a cry broke the stillness. A girl, tiny, perfect, alive. Clara held her close, sobbing with relief. James sat beside her, touching the baby's head with wonder. What's her name? She looked at Taka, then back at the child. Hope, she said softly. Her name is Hope. They built a new fire together, wrapped in stolen blankets. They sat shoulder to shoulder as the sky turned from red to gold. They didn't speak. There were no words left to say. Only breath, only warmth, only survival. And in the stillness, the past burned away behind them, like smoke on the wind.